It was a quiet evening in the small town of Abbotsville when Mina sat alone by the window, watching the orange glow of sunset fade behind the distant hills. The air was still, but her heart was heavy. She had worked her whole life to build a small world of comfort for her only son, Rohan. Everything she had, her little house, her savings, even her dreams, was for him. But that evening, something inside her felt strange. A cold fear that she couldn't explain wrapped around her chest like invisible hands. She couldn't shake the thought that something terrible was coming. And she was right. Because later that night, her world would fall apart in a way she could never have imagined. She still remembered that night. Mina had always been a simple woman. A retired schoolteacher, she spent her days tending her garden, reading old books, and talking to her neighbors. Her son Rohan lived in the city with his wife, Nisha, and her mother, Kamla. They would visit her sometimes, usually when they needed something. Mina never complained. She loved her son deeply and forgave every distance, every silence, every forgotten birthday. She told herself, he's busy, he's young, he has his own life. But lately, Rohan had been different. His calls were shorter, his tone colder. Whenever Mina mentioned money or her health, he changed the subject quickly. That night, the phone rang while Mina was folding her clothes. She picked it up with a smile, thinking it was Rohan. But his voice on the other end was not the warm, loving voice she knew. It was impatient, sharp. "Ma, can you check your online banking? I need to transfer some money." "I'll handle it for you. Just give me the login details," he said. Mina hesitated. She had never shared those details before. That money was her life saving, everything she had for her old age. But Rohan sounded stressed, almost desperate. "It's urgent, Ma," he insisted. "I'll fix it tomorrow." She wanted to believe him, so she told him what he needed. After the call, Mina sat on her bed for a long time, staring at the phone. Something didn't feel right. The silence in the house grew heavier. Even the ticking clock on the wall seemed slower. She told herself she was overthinking. Rohan was her son. He would never hurt her. But when she went to sleep that night, she couldn't find peace. Her dreams were filled with strange images, money flying out of her purse, her son walking away without looking back, and her voice echoing, calling his name into the darkness. The next morning, Mina woke up early and went to make tea. But as she poured the boiling water, her phone beeped. It was a message from the bank. Her eyes froze on the screen. "Transaction alert, your account balance is now 2,300 rupees. Her hands trembled. She blinked again, thinking it must be a mistake. She opened the banking app. The screen showed what she feared most, her entire savings, gone. Every rupee she had saved for years had vanished overnight. For a moment, Mina couldn't breathe. The cup slipped from her hand and shattered on the floor. The sound echoed through the empty house. Her chest tightened as she whispered, "No, this can't be true." She tried to call Rohan. No answer. She tried again. Nothing. Finally, after the fifth call, he picked up. But his tone was casual, almost irritated. "Ma, I'm busy. I'll talk later." Before she could speak, he hung up. Hours passed. Mina sat on the floor, surrounded by broken glass and scattered tea. Tears rolled down her wrinkled cheeks, but her mind was blank. She couldn't understand how her own son, the boy she raised with love, the child she sacrificed everything for, could do this to her. She remembered his childhood, the nights she stayed awake when he was sick, the food she skipped so he could eat. Her heart broke piece by piece as the truth sank in, her son had stolen from her. Later that evening, she received a call from a distant relative. "Did you know Rohan and Nisha left town?" the voice said. "They're going on a long trip abroad with Nisha's mother. Looks like they've moved for good." The phone nearly slipped from Mina's hand. Her knees felt weak. So that was it. He had emptied her account and left the country with his wife and mother-in-law. Without even looking back. Without even saying goodbye. That night, Mina didn't sleep. She sat by the window again, staring into the darkness. The wind howled outside, shaking the old trees. In the distance, a dog barked endlessly. The shadows seemed to move across the walls, whispering secrets only she could hear. Her mind replayed every memory, Rohan's laughter as a child, his promises as a grown man, his lies in the end. She couldn't understand what had changed him. Was it greed? Was it his wife? Or had she been blind to his true nature all along? Days turned into weeks. Mina tried calling Rohan again and again, but his number stopped working. She went to the bank, but the officer could only shake his head. The money was transferred legally, he said, we can't help. It was as if the world had turned against her. She had no one left. The house that once felt warm now felt like a grave. Every sound reminded her of her loss, the creak of the door, the echo of her own footsteps, the silence after sunset. But one night, something changed. It was raining heavily, thunder rolling across the sky. Mina sat in the dark, her heart numb, when she saw something unusual. A message appeared on her social media, an unknown account had tagged her in a photo. She opened it slowly. Her breath stopped. It was a picture of Rohan and Nisha at an airport, smiling, holding hands, with suitcases behind them. The caption read, "Finally leaving for our dream life abroad. Thank you for everything, Ma." Mina stared at the screen, her hands shaking. Her lips moved, but no words came out. The betrayal cut deeper than any knife. He had stolen her money and was celebrating it publicly. That night, as the rain poured outside and lightning flashed through the window, something inside Mina broke. But in that same moment, something new was born too, something cold, sharp, and strong. Revenge. She spent the next few days in silence, her mind racing with thoughts. Everyone in the neighborhood whispered behind her back. Some pitied her, some mocked her. Her own son left her, they said. She must have done something wrong. But Mina didn't respond. She acted calm, even smiled sometimes. But inside, she was no longer the same woman. She had decided one thing: if her son could destroy her life for money, she would make sure he paid for it in a way he could never forget. She began to collect information quietly. She visited an old friend who worked at the government office. She searched online for Rohan's new address. Slowly, piece by piece, she built the map of his new life. She learned that Rohan and Nisha had invested her stolen money into a small business abroad. They were posting pictures, showing off their new lifestyle, cars, dinners, vacations. Each photo was like a dagger in her heart, but it also fueled her fire. Every night, Mina would sit by her desk, looking at their photos, planning her next step. Her eyes were tired but steady. She no longer cried. She no longer begged. Her heart had turned to stone. She had one goal: to take back what was hers and to teach them a lesson so cruel that they would never forget the woman they betrayed. One day, she received a message from an unknown number. It said, "I know what your son did. And I can help you." Mina stared at the message for a long time. The room felt colder suddenly. She didn't know who it was or how they knew her story. But something about that message felt both terrifying and hopeful. Her finger hovered over the reply button. The rain started again outside, tapping against the window like a warning. She took a deep breath, her heart pounding. And then, she typed a single word: "Who?" The phone buzzed again almost instantly. "Someone who wants to make your son pay," the reply said. Mina froze. Her hands trembled as she read the words again. A strange chill ran down her spine. She didn't know it yet, but this message was going to change everything. Her revenge had just begun. She still remembered that night. The rain, the photo, the cold fire that began inside her. After the unknown message, Mina did not sleep for days. Her hands trembled each time the phone buzzed. She kept thinking about the words, "I know what your son did. And I can help you." At first she thought it might be a trick. Scammers use such words all the time. But something in that message felt true. It felt like someone who had seen the same picture she had seen, someone who knew the names, someone who had watched Rohan on the same social pages she watched. The thought both frightened and comforted her. She wanted to shout at the sky, to cry, to ask for her old life back. Instead she sat quiet and planned. Mina answered the message carefully. She wrote one short line, "Who are you?" Her thumb shook as she hit send. The reply came fast, "Meet me at the tea stall near the old bus stand. Come alone at 4. The line of the bus stand made her stomach drop. That place held memories. Years ago she had taken Rohan there to buy a small toy when he was a child. Now it felt like a crossroads. She dressed simply, putting on a plain shawl and the shoes she used for the market. Her hands smoothed her sari though she felt no pride. Alone she walked through the rainy streets, smelling wet earth and frying samosas from a stall she passed. Her heart beat hard, but she kept her face calm. The tea stall was small and dim. Steam rose from cups and mixed with the smell of chai and old wood. A few men sat at a table, talking low. Mina sat at the corner and pretended to read a newspaper. She watched every face. After 10 minutes a woman came and sat opposite her. She was not old, but her eyes had a tired sharpness. She wore a faded coat and held a small folder. She smiled once, a quick lift of the lips, and then spoke in a voice that did not waste words. "Mina ji?" Mina nodded slowly. "I am Saira," the woman said. "I knew your Rohan once." Saira told a short story. She had worked in the same company where Nisha's mother had once been known. She had seen Nisha in the city, posting pictures, and she had seen a pattern. She knew who Rohan was traveling with. She had contacts, one friend who did small investigative work, one lawyer who did pro bono cases sometimes. Saira did not promise miracles. She said, "I cannot bring back your money in a week. But I can help you find proof, and we can make them feel the shame they should feel." Mina listened. Her chest felt heavy and lighter at the same time. She did not know if she wanted legal letters or public shame more. Both hurt in different ways. Saira slid the folder across the table. Inside were printed screenshots, pictures of Rohan's social posts, the photo in the airport, and small notes about the businesses they had started. It was not much, but it was a start. Saira explained the plan in simple steps. First, gather more proof. A private investigator would follow their known addresses and find documents that showed where the money went. Second, file a complaint with the police and the bank using the proof. Third, start a small campaign to show the truth to people in Rohan's circle, business partners, old friends, clients. Not to destroy, Saira said quietly, but to put pressure. People who build a life on someone else's loss do not like light, she said. They will move when light falls on them. Mina felt the words like a match striking a stone. She agreed to everything without asking price. Money now mattered less than the idea of justice. For weeks they worked slowly. Mina met Saira every other day at the same chai stall. She gave small details she alone knew, stories of Rohan's childhood, names of places he used to talk about, letters he had once written. Saira used these to find threads, to follow small leads. The private investigator, a nervous young man named Amit, followed social accounts, traced purchases, and visited a shop in the city that sold a particular kind of bag shown in one of Rohan's photos. The man at the shop remembered a man who looked like Rohan, and he remembered the payment method, an online transfer from an account linked to a small company registered in a different city. It was small and messy and legal sounding, but it was a map. Every new piece of information made Mina feel closer to something she had not named before. She felt fear, yes, but also a deep, cold pleasure. Revenge was changing shape, not wild anger, but a plan that used patience like a blade. She was learning the language of proof, of slips and receipts and registration numbers. She learned to sit through the long quiet hours, scanning screens and writing notes. Her neighbors thought she was simply sad and alone. They did not know she had a folder of printed screenshots and a list of names that gave her heart a new rhythm. One evening, while the monsoon thundered, the investigator called with news. "Ma'am, they are opening a branch for their small business in another town," he said. "They posted a picture of the new office last week. There is a name on the banner, Sunrise Textiles. I can go and check next week." Mina shut her eyes. The word sunrise felt like mockery on her tongue. But important was the evidence, an office, a registration, and people who could be asked simple questions. Syra suggested sending one of their own people to nearby towns to talk with suppliers who might remember payments or deliveries. Every small testimony could be a stitch in the fabric of a case. At night Mina dreamed different dreams. She dreamed of letters with official stamps, of her name printed in short paragraphs, of Rohan looking at his phone with fear. But she also dreamed of Rohan's laugh from childhood, and a softness returned to her that surprised her. She had loved her son, and love did not die easily. This love mixed with anger, and the mixture made her steady. She no longer wanted violence or to ruin him completely. She wanted him to feel the loss he had given her and to understand the weight of what he had done. The revenge she planned was sharp but not cruel in a reckless way. It needed the law and people's eyes. Then, one afternoon, a new twist arrived like a splash of cold water. Syra showed Mina a printed message she had received from an unknown email account. The email had a photo attached. It showed Nisha at a small shop next to a woman who ran the office of Sunrise Textiles. The woman in the photo wore a name badge. On the badge, hidden in the blur of the picture, was a telephone number. Syra blew on the ink as if the number might vanish. "Call this," she said. "Be careful, but call." Mina's fingers went cold. For a moment she felt old and foolish and brave all at once. She pressed the phone and heard a deep voice answer. It was a man who gave his name as an office manager. He said the boss was not in, but he would pass a message. They played the slow game then. The investigator called suppliers and asked about invoices. Syra called old neighbors of Nisha's who remembered small things. Mina watched. Each call built a small echo. Somewhere someone knew something. In one small shop, the owner said he remembered a large cloth order paid quickly with a transfer originating from a bank in Mina's city. The trail led back and forth like a restless animal. Mina found herself reading legal pages, learning what words like complaint and evidence meant. She learned to write in a calm voice that could not be twisted. She began to sleep more, the weight inside her changing from a raw pain to a purpose. One night, Syra gave Mina a new task. "You must go to the civil office," Syra said. "Sign an official affidavit. Without this, the police will be slow." Mina went the next morning. The office smelled like ink and old paper. She sat at a long table and wrote down everything she remembered, every date, every image. Her hand cramped, but she kept writing until the clerk stamped her paper and folded it into an envelope. After she left, the sky seemed brighter though clouds still hung. For the first time since the money left, Mina felt the small comfort of a formal step forward. Weeks rolled on. The investigator found small things, a slip showing that a transfer had been routed through a relative's account, a photograph of Rohan standing beside a car with a registration number that matched a number on a delivery invoice. They collected these and made copies. Mina kept a folder under her bed, a new treasure chest of proof. She was careful to protect it, wrapping it in a cloth and hiding it inside an old rice bag. It felt strange to hide evidence in the same place she used to hide sweets when Rohan was a child. The house felt different now, alive with purpose, not only memory. And then one afternoon, while Mina boiled potatoes for dinner, her phone buzzed with a message that made the room tilt. It was a photograph sent by an unknown number. Mina opened it with fingers that refused to be steady. Her tea sat forgotten on the counter. The photo showed Rohan on a small street, smiling, holding a little boy. The child looked about 3 years old and held a small toy car. Behind them, a sign in the local language showed the name of a small shop, one Meena recognized from a picture Saira had shown her. Rohan's face in the photo did not show shame. He looked happy. He looked ordinary. For a moment Meena felt as if her breath had been stolen. The image pierced her because it carried a new truth. His life had a new shape now, and a child might be part of the life her son had built with her money. Her heart swung between anger and a strange softness. She thought of that small child's hands in the toy car, and in that instant she felt something more complicated than revenge. But there was no time for softness now. Cyrus' message came after the photo. He is closer than you think. He will come to India for a family meeting next week. He has to renew some papers. We can do this then. Meena's hands shook like leaves. A meeting. A chance. Her mind flooded with plans, some simple, some dangerous. She could call the police now. She could sit quietly and wait. She could confront him herself. The room filled with the smell of boiled potatoes and the heavy, patient rain outside. Meena wrapped her shawl tighter around her shoulders. She felt the slow turning of a wheel in her chest, the wheel of what would come next. She picked up the phone and typed one line to Saira, "Tell me when and where." Her thumb hovered over send. Outside, thunder filled the sky and, for one long moment, the whole house listened. Ha stepped forward, her voice sharp as glass. "This is harassment, look at her." Kamla looked at Meena with cold eyes and spat words like knives. The clerk, seeing the rising tension, called the security guard. For a moment Meena thought the plan would fail, that the police or security would take her away, that Rohan would call men who would push her out of the room like trash. But the people who had watched these things before, small shopkeepers, retired clerks, a woman with a baby in her arms, stared with the slow focus of witnesses. Saira had told her that public eyes could be safer than empty rooms. Now those eyes watched. Rohan reached for his phone and spoke quickly in a low tone. He made a call, a sharp thing, and the phone trembled in his hand. "Tell them I am being harassed," he said. "Tell them to come." The words were small, and in that smallness Meena saw the man he had become, someone who used calls and money like a shield. Security moved toward her politely but with a body ready. Meena felt the first sting of fear. She looked down at the papers and then at the clerk. "Please," she said. "I have filed an affidavit. I have proof. I want to speak to someone official now." Her voice held a patience that caught like a net. The clerk paused and then, because she had the stamped affidavit in her hand and the folder of evidence on the counter, he made a call of his own, a call to a higher officer who had seen similar complaints. For a moment the office smelled of paper and rain and something like fate. A small crowd, more people than before, closed in like slow waves. Rohan's face crumpled. He tried to smile, to make the scene small, but a woman took out her phone and started to record. The little red light felt like a hand on his neck. Just as Meena gathered herself to hand the officer the folder and speak the words that might force action, something small and strange happened that turned the air cold. A young man pushed through the crowd and held out a paper bag. He looked at Meena with eyes that flashed recognition and fear at once. "Madam," he said, voice quiet. "This was left for you. It was dropped by someone who left this room 5 minutes ago." Meena took the bag with fingers that did not want to be steady. Inside, folded tight like a secret, was a small envelope. No one spoke. The clerk looked from the envelope to Rohan. Rohan's face lost its color all at once. His hands went into his pockets as if to steady them. The security guard moved closer. A woman behind Meena whispered, "What is that?" Meena held the envelope up and felt the paper like a pulse. She did not know who had left it. Saira had not told her to expect it. The room felt full of waiting. Meena slipped her thumb under the flap and opened it slowly, like one opens a wound to see what is inside. For one breathless moment she saw only a folded paper. Then she read the first line and her eyes widened in a way that made the people around her lean nearer. The sentence on the paper had the power to change the story she had come to tell. It read, in a hand that looked like a hurried confession, "If you speak now, you will lose everything else. We have proof about you too." The name below the line was one she did not expect. The room grew very still and a new kind of fear slid along Mina's spine, not the fear of being taken away, but the fear of what else might be hidden under other papers, other lives. Rohan's lips moved, and he looked suddenly very young and very afraid. The clerk cleared his throat, and outside, far away, a truck horn blew like a single long warning. Mina folded the paper back and held it to her chest, feeling the weight of a choice she had not planned for, to strike now with what she had, or to step back and learn what this new secret meant. She felt the whole world narrowing to the little envelope in her hand and the thin, thin sound of her own breathing. She still remembered that night. The rain, the photo, the envelope, the paper that threatened her into silence, each thing sat heavy in her mind like a stone that would not roll away. After the moment in the office, Mina walked out slowly as if the air itself had weight. Her legs felt tired, but her head was clear. She met Saira at the tea stall with Amit waiting too. The three of them sat under the small tin roof while the rain tapped a steady drum on the metal. Mina handed the folded paper back to Saira. They did not speak for a long time. Around them, the market moved like a river of small lives, women bargaining, men smoking, a child chasing a cricket ball. In that small busy world Mina felt a cold calm inside. She had thought her choice would be only to speak the truth or to hold back. Now she had new work, to see who had sent the paper, and to protect herself while she pressed on. Saira opened the paper again and looked closely. The handwriting was hurried and strange, but the name signed at the bottom was not unknown to her. "This looks like the style of Kamla's sister," Saira said quietly, and Mina felt a hot shock run through her. The thought that Nisha's mother or someone close to them would try to blackmail her made her blood burn. It changed the shape of the anger inside her. Betrayal was now a many-headed thing. They moved fast from that day. Amit used his contacts to trace the envelope. It had been dropped by a young man who often ran small errands for people in that part of the city. The man remembered being given the bag in a hurry and told Amit he had been paid cash. It was little, but it gave the investigators a path. Saira called a woman who sometimes did background checks and asked her to look at Kamla and Nisha's friends. Soon another small truth came out. Kamla had been in town briefly 2 weeks before, and she had met a woman from a nearby hamlet who had a son who did odd jobs. The picture started to fit, like a puzzle where one piece showed the face of someone who did not like Mina. Mina felt sick and oddly strong at once. To be threatened by the mother-in-law of her own son was another sort of pain. She had raised her boy and now she learned they had used family to shut her up. The thought made her blood cool with resolve. If they would break her at the sight of one paper, she would make sure they faced more light than they had ever planned for. While the small investigation moved, Saira and Amit worked on safety. They hired a small lawyer who would be on call. The lawyer read Mina's affidavit and the folder and told them plainly what he thought. They had a good base to push a legal case if they could connect the transfers to Rohan's accounts and the business registered abroad. The blackmail paper was a risk, he warned, because it suggested there were things to hide on Mina's side. Mina felt confusion. She had nothing to hide that had any weight. But the man with the red pen in the law office pointed out another danger: people who steal use other small lies to confuse the victim and the officers. He said, "They will try to make you look bad so the court slows down. We must be careful. We will record everything, get witnesses, and make sure your life cannot be turned against you." Mina listened and learned new words: affidavit, FIR, evidence chain. The lawyer gave her a list of simple steps: do not meet alone with strangers, keep copies of everything, let Saira and Amit handle the meetings, never sign anything without a lawyer. These rules felt heavy but right. Mina wrote them on a piece of paper with a shaky hand and kept it under her pillow like a prayer. Days passed with small victories. Amit found a bank slip that showed a transfer from Mina's account to a company account in the city shortly before Rohan's trip. It was not proof of theft by itself, but when matched with the private receipts that Syra had found at the small cloth shop, the lines began to make sense. Mina slept less, ate less, and yet felt a new energy she had not known in years. She would walk early in the morning to a small park and sit on a bench and imagine the coming meeting in her head. She would see Rohan's face, his ways of speaking, the set of his shoulders. Sometimes she felt love so sharp it surprised her, sometimes she felt rage as hot as the sun. Both these things lived together now. She tried to remind herself that the child in Rohan's arms in the photo was not guilty. The child had nothing to do with the money. That thought kept a sliver of softness alive in her. Then Syra came to her with a plan that made Mina's heart both quicken and slow. "We will not only go to the police," Syra said in the small room where Mina kept the folder. "We will make a public meeting where Rohan cannot easily hide. He will come to renew papers, we will arrange to be there with witnesses and a reporter who will write." Mina looked down at her hands. The idea of making the story open to public light felt right. Syra explained how light broke lies. If news reached Rohan's small circle, people would ask questions, and shame might force him to move money back or to face action. Amit would bring cameras, the lawyer would be ready, and Syra would place small notes that would ensure a few impartial people saw them speak. It felt bold and dangerous. Amit warned again, "They may try to silence you with new threats. They may call the police on you. They might hire men to push you out." Mina felt fear, but the fear sat beside something colder, a vow that she would not be pushed into silence. They worked like this for a week. Mina practiced what she would say in a calm voice. She folded the papers neatly and kept extra copies in her bag. She told only 2 neighbors that she was going to the office the next day, as a small measure so there would be witnesses. At night, when she could not sleep, she would hold a small framed photo of Rohan as a child, his round cheeks, the missing tooth when he laughed, and she would feel both the sting of his betrayal and a quiet place in her chest where love still lived. She could not tell whether the love would soften her revenge or make it sharper. The question hung in her like a bird on a wire. On the day of the meeting, the sky was thin and bright. The town smelled of frying onions and fresh paint. Mina dressed in a simple sari and carried the folder close to her chest. She walked with Syra and Amit, the 3 of them moving like a small force. Even so, the city felt bigger than their small plan. When they reached the office, a crowd had already gathered, some curious neighbors, some people who had seen Rohan's posts and wanted to know more, and one small reporter from a local paper who had agreed to come. The clerk who had helped Mina before let them sit nearby. They waited. Mina's heart thundered, but her face did not show it. Time moved and then it stopped in a strange way. Rohan and his family did not come. Instead, a man in a plain suit walked in and said into the room, "Rohan's appointment is cancelled. He will not be coming today." The words were small, but they were a stone dropped into the quiet pond. People around them shifted. Mina felt the careful plan wobble. Syra bit her lip and whispered, "They have means to cancel. He will think he can run." Mina breathed in and thought quickly. If Rohan would not come, they must change the plan. She would not let him slip away again. She rose and decided to go to the registry office where papers could be signed without his presence, and she asked the reporter to follow. Amit would call the private investigator to find Rohan's current location. Syra would talk to the clerk and find out if any new information came in. They moved like quick shadows through the hall, following small leads. The reporter held his small camera, his mouth open like a sun that never closed. As Mina walked out of the office gate, the phone in Amit's hand buzzed with a message that made his face go pale. He read it and then looked at Mina with eyes that had a new, sharp edge. "They posted a photo," he said, voice low. "Rohan and Nisha. They are in the market 2 streets away. They are buying something, a small toy for the child perhaps." Mina felt the ground tilt. The world was suddenly very small and very large at once. She could see them now, maybe, her son, his wife, the child. Her legs moved faster. The reporter followed. The city air filled her nose with dust and sugar. They turned a corner and saw a small crowd gathered around a stall. And there, in the middle, with a bright cloth over his shoulder, was a man whose face ached her heart like a hammer. It was Rohan. He laughed as he took the toy from the seller, and Nisha stood close, smiling. The small boy looked up at Meena and waved his sticky hand. For a moment time slowed and Meena's chest felt both like it would split open and like it would fall apart. She stepped forward. But before she could call his name, the lights along the street blinked hard and went out as if someone had put a hand over the sun. The market fell into a hush, and in that black suddenness a voice came from the dark close by, a voice she did not know, a voice that said her name softly with a dangerous kindness. The voice behind Meena sent a chill through her spine. The street was suddenly wrapped in half-darkness, the kind that makes every shadow look alive. She turned slowly, her eyes trying to find the source of that whisper. The faint light from a nearby shop generator flickered, throwing quick flashes across the crowd. And then she saw him, a tall man in a brown jacket, half his face hidden under a cap. His eyes were fixed on her with a strange calmness that didn't belong in that noisy market. "Don't move," the man said, still quiet. "You don't want to make a scene here." Meena froze. Saira and Amit were a few steps behind her, and she could feel their confusion. The man came closer, his voice soft but his words sharp. "Mrs. Meena, you are making a mistake. Stop digging into your son's affairs. Go home. Forget what you think you know." Before she could answer, Amit stepped between them, his voice firm. "Who are you? Why are you following her?" The man smiled a little, a smile that never reached his eyes. "Just someone who doesn't like seeing families destroyed. That's all." He turned his head slightly toward Meena and added, "Sometimes the truth costs more than it gives." And with that, he walked away, melting into the moving crowd before anyone could react. For a long moment, Meena stood frozen in that narrow lane. The sounds of the market returned slowly, the calls of sellers, the rustle of paper bags, the cry of a baby. But the whisper stayed inside her ears. "Forget what you think you know." She felt her fingers shake. Saira took her arm gently, guiding her away. "He was watching you," Saira said. "They've hired someone to keep track of you." Meena didn't reply. Her eyes moved toward where she'd seen Rohan just a few moments ago, but now he was gone. The bright toy stall stood empty. Only the small toy car he had bought for his son was lying on the ground, one wheel missing. She bent down and picked it up. It felt warm from the sun, almost alive in her hand. That night, Meena could not sleep. The man's voice, the missing wheel, the look in her son's eyes, all of it ran circles inside her head. She sat by the window of her small apartment, the curtains drawn, the city lights trembling far away. Every sound outside felt like a footstep. Every passing vehicle sounded like a threat. But underneath that fear was another feeling, one she hadn't expected, a quiet kind of strength. The more they tried to scare her, the more her courage grew. At dawn, she made a decision. She would not run anymore. The next morning, she went to the small lawyer's office alone. Her hands trembled slightly as she placed the folder on the table. "File the case," she said firmly. The lawyer looked surprised. "Are you sure? Once we start this, there's no going back." Meena nodded. "I have already lost everything once. They can't take more from me." That same day, the lawyer drafted the complaint, attaching the documents Amit had gathered, the transfer slips, the signatures, the receipts, even the pictures. They sent it to the bank, the police, and a local financial officer. For the first time, Rohan's name was officially written in a report that said fraud and financial misuse. The days that followed were like walking through a storm. Calls came from unknown numbers. Once, a stone hit her window at night. Another time, a letter appeared under her door, written in red ink, "Drop the case or regret it." Saira wanted to move Meena to her place for safety, but Meena refused. "If I hide now," she said, "they win." Still, the fear was real. Every time she stepped outside, she looked over her shoulder. The man in the brown jacket seemed to appear everywhere, at the corner shop, at the bus stop, even near the park bench where she used to sit in the morning. He never spoke again, but his silent presence was louder than words. Then one evening, Amit rushed into her house, his breath quick. "We found something," he said. "You need to see this." He placed his phone on the table and played a short video clip. It showed Rohan sitting inside a restaurant with another man, a banker. The two of them were laughing, shaking hands. On the table was a document folder, the same color and brand as Mina's missing file from months ago. "They're planning to transfer the last of your money abroad," Amit said. "If we act fast, we can stop it. But we'll need proof that the signature is fake." Mina stared at the video for a long time. It was her son's face, older now, sharper. His smile, the one she had loved when he was a boy, now looked cruel. "I taught him to write his name," she whispered softly. "And now he uses it to destroy mine." That night, Mina and Amit met the lawyer again. They planned to visit the bank the next morning and freeze any transaction related to her account. It was a race against time, and against people who had already shown how far they could go. But that night, before dawn, someone knocked on Mina's door. 3 sharp knocks, then silence. Mina froze in her chair. The sound came again. She walked slowly toward the door, her heart beating hard in her chest. Through the peephole, she saw nothing but darkness. She turned the lock carefully. "Who's there?" she called. A pause. Then a voice she knew too well answered, low, careful, trembling. "It's me, Alma. Please, open the door." Mina's breath caught in her throat. It was Rohan. She hesitated for a moment, her hand gripping the doorknob tightly. 100 thoughts ran through her mind, fear, anger, hope. Then she slowly turned the key. The door creaked open, and her son stood there, rain dripping from his hair, eyes red and tired. He looked nothing like the confident man from the video. He looked broken. "Alma," he said, voice cracking. "I need your help. They're after me now." Mina stared at him in disbelief. The same son who had emptied her bank account, the same boy who had laughed at her pain, now stood before her, begging for her protection. And as lightning flashed outside, she felt the strangest mix of emotions. Part of her wanted to hold him, and part of her wanted to destroy everything he had built. She took a step back and said coldly, "Come inside, Rohan. We need to talk." The door closed behind him with a soft click. The storm outside grew louder, and for a moment, Mina couldn't tell whether the thunder was in the sky or in her own heart. Rohan stepped into the small living room, dripping rainwater onto the cracked floor tiles. The dim light from the single bulb flickered, making shadows jump on the walls. Mina stood a few steps away, her arms folded tightly across her chest. The air between them felt thick, full of words they had never said, full of pain neither could ignore. For a long minute, neither spoke. Only the sound of the rain outside filled the silence. Then Rohan took a slow breath and said softly, "Alma, I didn't mean for things to go this far." His voice trembled, and for the first time, Mina noticed how tired his eyes were. He looked older, worn down by something more than guilt. But she didn't answer. She just watched him. Rohan dropped his gaze, rubbing his hands together nervously. "They used me," he said. "I thought I could handle it. I thought I could make money and keep everyone happy. But Nisha and her mother, they turned on me. They said if I didn't do what they wanted, they'd ruin me. And now they've taken everything." He looked up at Mina, desperation clear in his eyes. "They even took my passport, Alma. I have nowhere to go." Mina felt her heart twist, but she held her expression still. She wanted to believe him. She wanted to believe that her son, her only child, was a victim too. But the memory of those empty accounts, the mocking phone calls, and the sleepless nights reminded her that the same boy had chosen to betray her first. You expect me to feel sorry for you? She said finally, her voice low but steady. After what you did to me? Rohan flinched. I know I did wrong, he whispered. I don't deserve forgiveness. But please, Alma, they're dangerous. They'll come for me if I don't find a way out. He looked around nervously, as if expecting someone to appear at the window. Mina walked past him and shut the curtains tight. Sit, she said. Rohan obeyed, sinking into the old wooden chair. The house felt smaller than ever. Mina went to the kitchen and poured 2 cups of tea, her hands trembling just a little. When she returned, Rohan's face was buried in his hands. I still remember that night, Mina said softly, placing the cup before him. The night you emptied my account and left without a word. I sat here, waiting, thinking maybe it was all a mistake. I told myself my son would never steal from me. But you did, Rohan. You did it so easily. Her voice cracked, but she didn't stop. Now tell me, why should I trust you again? Rohan didn't look up. He just whispered, because they'll kill me if you don't. Mina froze. What did you say? She asked, her voice barely above a whisper. They'll kill me, he repeated, lifting his face to meet her eyes. Nisha's mother, Kamla, she found out I was planning to take the money back and run. She said I'd already made them look like fools. She's not going to let me live peacefully. I overheard her talking to someone last night. They're sending people after me. Mina's mind spun. The pieces she had been struggling to fit together, the man in the brown jacket, the threats, the envelope, it all suddenly made sense. The threats weren't just about silencing her. They were controlling Rohan too. She felt a strange mix of rage and pity swelling inside her chest. So now you know how it feels, she said quietly. To be hunted, to be betrayed. Rohan nodded weakly. I know, he said. I was blind, Alma. I thought she loved me, that she wanted a good life with me. But she only wanted your money. When I told her we should return it, she laughed in my face. She said, your mother raised a fool who thinks honesty feeds you. He covered his face again. I was so stupid. For a long time, Mina said nothing. She just listened to the sound of his broken words and watched the rain sliding down the window. Slowly, the sharp anger that had lived inside her for months began to shift. She still hated what he had done, but she also saw the scared boy beneath the man. The same boy who used to hide behind her sorry when thunder frightened him. What do you want from me now? She asked at last. I want to make it right, Rohan said. Help me get out of here, Alma. I'll return everything, I swear. Just give me one chance. His words hung in the air like fragile glass. Mina took a deep breath, thinking carefully. She had 2 choices, turn him in, or use him to destroy the people who had torn her life apart. Her revenge had never been about hurting her son, it had been about justice. Maybe, she thought, justice could still come through him. All right, she said slowly. If you really mean it, we'll fix this. But you'll do exactly as I say. No lies this time. Rohan nodded quickly. I'll do anything. By the next morning, Saira and Amit arrived at Mina's house. They were shocked to see Rohan there, sitting quietly with his head down. Saira's first reaction was anger. You have some nerve showing your face here after everything, she snapped. Mina raised her hand to calm her. He came for help, she said. And we're going to use that. Saira frowned. You're sure we can trust him? We don't have a choice, Mina replied. He knows their secrets. Rohan lifted his head slowly. Kamla keeps records, he said. She has files hidden in a small godown near the old market. Bank receipts, fake accounts, everything. If we get those, you can prove everything she did. Amit leaned forward. Can you take us there? Rohan nodded. Yes. but we'll have to move at night. Her men are always watching. That evening, under the cover of darkness, they set out in Amit's old car. The city was quiet, the air thick with mist. Rohan guided them through narrow lanes until they reached a small storage building behind a row of shuttered shops. The place smelled of dust and rusted metal. "It's in there," Rohan whispered. "The third room from the left." Amit used a small torchlight to guide the way. Every creak of the floor sounded too loud. Mina's heart pounded. As they reached the third door, Rohan pulled a small key from his pocket. "I stole it before I left," he said quietly. The lock clicked open. Inside was a small metal cabinet, and inside it, piles of files, receipts, and signed checks. Cyrus' eyes widened. "This is it," she breathed. "This is the proof." They quickly began photographing everything, afraid to take too long. Mina felt a strange satisfaction rise inside her. The revenge she had waited for was finally within reach. But just as Amit took the last photo, a sudden sound shattered the silence, footsteps outside, quick and heavy. "Someone's coming," Syra whispered sharply. Rohan froze. Mina's breath caught in her throat. The door creaked. A flashlight beam cut through the dark. "Who's in there?" a man's voice barked. They had been found. Rohan grabbed Mina's hand. "This way," he hissed, pulling her toward a back door. They ran through a narrow passage, hearts pounding, papers flying behind them. Outside, the rain had started again, drenching everything. They stumbled into the street just as two men ran out of the building, shouting. Amit started the car and shouted, "Get in." They jumped in, tires screeching as the car sped off into the night. Mina looked back through the window. One of the men stood under the streetlight, holding a phone to his ear, and she recognized the brown jacket. It was the same man who had warned her before. As they drove away, Mina's heart thudded so hard she could barely breathe. But even through the fear, a fierce light burned inside her. They had the evidence now. The truth was no longer hidden in shadows. And this time, she wasn't the one running. Yet deep inside, she knew something was not over, that the men who had found them tonight would not stop until they got those files back. The real fight had just begun. She still remembered that night, the rain, the files, the flash of the man's light, and that memory pushed her forward even now as the car sped through the dark streets toward the lawyer's small office. The city smelled of wet dust and petrol, and every sound inside the car felt too loud, the tires like drumbeats in Mina's chest, while Rohan sat hunched and pale beside her, his shirt stuck to his skin from the rain, and Amit drove with a face that showed both fear and a thin hope. They reached the lawyer's place and burst inside like people who had run a long way. The lawyer took one look at the folders and began to move fast. Calls to the police, photographs to a reporter, and a guarded email to a financial officer who could freeze accounts. Mina watched every movement with a strange calm. The papers they had taken from the godown lay on the table, spread out like small evidence of a large lie, receipts with numbers that did not add up, signatures that looked copied, and notes in Kamla's handwriting about transfers and shell companies. Syra and Amit worked like a small machine, checking names against lists, calling suppliers who confirmed shipments and payments, and one by one the shadows of truth turned into shapes that could be shown to people in power. For the first time in months, Mina felt that the web around her was not only made of lies but of little threads she could pull. They agreed to go to the local newsman first, a sensible man who had promised to protect their identity until the story was solid, and then to the financial office to put pressure that no one could easily erase. Rohan watched the papers like a man watching his own funeral, his hands always touching something as if he wanted to make sure it was real. Mina heard him breathe and felt both pity and steady fire. They planned for how to present the proof, copies for the bank, a sealed folder for the police that would serve as complaint, and photographs for the reporter that would make a small, quiet storm in the city. The lawyer warned them again of danger, that people with money and power could move quickly and use other false papers to strike back, but Mina felt ready. She had learned how to be small and patient, now she learned to be loud in the right rooms. Late into the night, the reporter agreed to run the story when they had verified the chain of evidence, and the financial officer promised to look into the bank transfers as long as the complaint was filed formally. The sense of momentum wrapped around them like a warm cloak, and Mina allowed herself a small breath of relief. But as the first light of dawn crept through the lawyer's thin curtain, a new message appeared on Mina's phone that made the blood in her face run cold. An unknown number, a short text with no name, only 3 words: "We have him." Her hands went cold and the cup of tea slipped from her fingers, spilling hot on the table. Rohan's head snapped up, hope turning quickly into raw fear. Amit grabbed the phone and read the message again. There was no number to call back, only the 3 small words ringing in the small room. Cyrus' face went white, and the lawyer pushed his chair back like a man who had been punched. The thought hit them all at once: the small child in the photo, the little boy who had smiled at Mina in the market, the son of her son, and the same people who had used threats and envelopes now had moved to something darker. Before any plan could be changed, before they could call the police or the reporter or set a trap, the phone buzzed again with a voice call. Mina put it to her ear with hands that would not stop shaking, and the voice on the other end was calm and cold and very close. "If you make one step toward the media, the boy dies," it said plainly. Then a click, and the line went dead. The room seemed to tilt and all the wind that had been at Mina's back fell away, leaving only a vast, heavy silence and the terrible, sharp question burning at the center of everything: who had taken the child, and how far would they go to stop Mina from finishing what she had started? She still remembered that night. The rain, the photo, the envelope, the threat about the child, all of it sat in her chest like a stone that would not move. When the voice on the phone said, "If you make one step toward the media, the boy dies," something in Mina froze and something else snapped awake. She could feel every breath in the small lawyer's room, like the world had become a single held note. For a moment she wanted to give up everything, to fold the papers back into the rice bag and hide them where no one could find them. But she had come too far. The thought of the frightened little face she had seen in the market made her blood boil and her hands steady. She looked at Rohan, at the thin lines under his eyes, at the way his fingers clenched the edge of the chair. He looked back at her with a pain that was his and also hers. In that moment they both understood the shape of what must be done: not a fight in the street or a loud public shame, but a careful, quiet rescue that would use the very things their enemies thought they controlled against them. Syra was the first to move. She reached for the investigator's phone and called a number Ahmed had once used for a friend who ran a small rescue team, men who moved at night, who knew how to find a person without making the wrong people notice. They could not call the police first. The voice had sounded too sure of what the police would do. Instead they used the network they had built slowly: the shopkeepers who owed favors, the reporter who had promised help in private, the small lawyer who knew a judge who favored quick emergency orders. Within 2 hours, a plan formed like a map, folded and refolded until it fit the small lines of the city. Rohan would act as bait, only because he knew the routes and the people who watched him, while Mina, hidden, would be ready to step forward if the men tried to move the child. It was dangerous. They all knew this. But the child's life mattered more than any fear. That night the city smelled of wet iron and frying onions. Mina sat in the back of Amit's car holding nothing but a small flashlight and her folder. Her hands did not shake now. If they did, she did not show it. The rescue team moved like shadows, small and patient and quick. They found the godown where Kamla and her men kept a spare room for the child when they passed through the city. It was a low building with a blind window and a locked gate. Rohan walked up to the gate with his head down, pretending to ask about a missing parcel. A man with a cap, one of the watchers, came to the gate and spoke to Rohan roughly. Inside, a small voice answered, and for a moment Mina heard the child laugh, the sound cutting into her like light. Her heart nearly stopped with both the joy and the new fear that came with it. Then, like a practiced wave, the rescue team moved. Amit and 2 others created a little noise in the side lane to pull 2 guards away. Syra and 2 more slipped in the back through a loose board. Mina stayed by the gate, listening. She heard the small shoes of a child, an adult voice humming, the shuffle of a newspaper. Her palms went slick with sweat, but her throat stayed calm. Inside, Rohan found the boy sitting on a thin mattress, clutching the toy car with the missing wheel. The child looked up and blinked, not fully understanding the faces that flooded his room. Rohan crouched down slowly and said the name the boy knew, his small name, a name Rohan had once whispered when he rocked him to sleep, little Arav. The child's eyes widened with a fragile hope, and he reached out when Rohan touched his hand. For a second everything was only light and the sound of a small breath. Then a shout came from outside. A guard had noticed the men who distracted him. The moment was fragile and raw. Mina felt the house tilt. She stepped forward because her feet would not wait any longer. Syra and Amit grabbed the child and pulled him toward the back door where the rescue men waited with the car. A man in a brown jacket lunged out with a shout, but the rescue men were quick. A short scuffle, a brief scream, and then the small car drove off into the night with the child crying softly in Rohan's arms and Mina at the wheel for the first few meters until Amit took over. They went straight to a safe house the reporter had arranged, a small room where the child could be comforted and where a woman with gentle hands sat waiting with warm milk and clean clothes. Mina held the child like someone holding a candle against wind. He was small and scared, and when he finally stopped shaking he clung to Mina the way a child clings to a stranger who looks like family. Mina's heart broke and mended in the same breath. The relief was enormous and cold at the same time. They had him. But the danger was not over. The men who had taken the child were still moving. Kamla would not let things go. They needed to act fast. The next morning, the lawyer filed a formal complaint again, now with the added crime of kidnapping and with the child as a victim. The reporter wrote a quiet but clear article that did not name the child but described the events and the proof of the money trail. The story reached more eyes than they expected. Suppliers who had been silent the week before now came forward, perhaps because they feared being linked to kidnapping. One by one, small pieces of proof turned into a bigger net, bank accounts frozen, a summons for Kamla and Nisha, a court order to present the child in family court to determine safe custody. The men who had tried to scare Mina had thought their money and threats would always keep them safe. They had not expected her to learn how to use the law and the people who believed her as tools. They had not expected that a small woman, who had once sat alone with a broken cup on the floor, could become the center of a movement that would pull light into some very dark places. There was a hearing that week in a quiet room with a small judge and a few officials. Mina sat strong though her hands trembled. Rohan sat beside her, and Mina looked at him through a new lens, not only as the son who had stolen but as the man who had helped save his child. Kamla was present with a defense lawyer. She wore her anger like armor but her face was thin. The judge looked at the papers, the receipts, the photos, the kidnapping report, the chain of messages. The evidence was heavy and careful and the law moved as it must. In the end, the court ordered that the child remain with Mina and Rohan under supervised care until a full inquiry could decide the future. Kamla and Nisha were detained on charges of fraud and kidnapping while investigators from the financial office and the police waited to gather more proof for the final criminal case. It was not a grand public defeat for them, but it was a start, a place where they could not hide. In the days that followed, life returned to a slow, real rhythm. Mina learned to make milk for the child, to change small clothes, to tie laces, and to sing a quiet song that calmed his fears. Rohan worked with the lawyer to transfer funds back where he could prove they had come from, and he sat with Mina at nights, eyes tired but softer. He apologized in ways that needed no loud words, with small tasks, with quiet nights by the window, with the way he helped sweep the floor. Mina forgave in ways that surprised her, not because the pain went away, but because the child in her arms needed a family that could be steady and honest. Her revenge had not been cruelty, it had been the recovery of truth, the making of a place where justice could breathe. The men who had used fear had lost the power they thought they had. When the case finally closed months later, the court ordered restitution where possible, and Kamla and Nisha received sentences that fit the crimes they had committed. The money could not always be fully recovered, but the bank had to admit failures and change some rules. The small community that had once whispered now watched how a small woman had taught them about courage. Rohan began to rebuild a life that was honest and small. He worked in a shop, learning the value of slow work. Mina opened her window wide again and let the sun fall on the plants she loved. The child, Arav, learned to laugh and to call Mina Alma with a voice full of trust. At night, when Mina sat alone for a moment, she would think of the long road from the night the money vanished to the day the little boy slept soundly in her house. The pain had not gone away entirely, but it had been shaped into something that helped, not hurt. In the end, Mina's revenge was not a cruel punishment, it was a reclaiming of life. She taught a lesson that was quiet and strong, that betrayal could be answered by truth, that a mother's love could hold both anger and mercy, and that small people could change the course of big things when they refused to be silent. She still remembered that night, and now she remembered the mornings when light came back through her window. If you enjoyed this story, please like, subscribe, and share your thoughts in the comments.